see everybody. We continue our year-long theme of home, where we are trying to build a great home here for people in the world who are looking for a home to come to. We are trying to build great homes within our family life, and honestly, we are trying to prepare this world for the home that God will one day dwell in once again. This month, under that banner of home, we're studying out this idea of the simple life. And I think in order to make a good home, we have to have less complicated lives. We have to simplify life. Homes that are erratic and that are all over the place and that are not simple are horrible places to grow up. Complicated, complex, chaotic places are not a great place to grow in. And so that's why we're studying this out. You know, the last couple of days I've been reading Ecclesiastes, and there's nothing that has the potential to make you more depressed in life than reading the book of Ecclesiastes. The book begins with futility, futility, everything is futility. And, you know, I've always, when I was younger, I loved this book. Because I was like, that's right. Life is meaningless. So don't tell me to smile about anything. I don't want to smile. It's all meaningless. And I don't want to do school. I don't want to do anything. It's all pointless. And then as I've aged and as you add responsibilities in life, and as you have to take ownership of certain things, when I was younger, I didn't have to take ownership of much, and so it's very easy to not care. And then once I started having things, and once I started owning things like a career and a family and all of that, you start to go, well, I don't know that I agree that life is meaningless. And yet this is in the Bible. And I think one of the things I've come to is that, you know, when you read the book of Ecclesiastes, it says life is meaningless. That word meaningless is the same word for like vapor, and it's the same word for mist or smoke. And you know, the thing about life is that you can't control it. In the same way that you cannot control vapors, every time you try to get your arms around it, your hands around it, and you try and do something to control it, it goes somewhere else. And I think that's one of the messages of Ecclesiastes, is there's nothing that you can do. Whether you're righteous, whether you're wise, whether you're wealthy, whether you're accomplished, there's nothing that you can do to control this life. And there's 4 times within the book where it says, so what you should care about is a simple life. A life with your family. A good conversation with friends. You know, this is worthy of pursuing. And so I love this idea that while everything in this life, there's nothing that we can do to control anything, to control everything or anything, we can build a simple life, and that is good. You know, and today as we examine that simple life, we're going to discuss the need for balance in our lives. I think too often we live with too much imbalance in life. We work too much and we sleep too little. We eat too much food and we exercise too little. We have too much stress, too much reliance on ourselves, or too much chasing security from the world, and too little prayer and too little meditation. Too much of what isn't truly significant to us, and too little of what is crucial to obtain a flourishing life. Go ahead and open your Bibles to Luke chapter 2, verse 4. You know, I know that I do, and you probably do as well. I'm assuming you probably take for granted the concept of balance in life. And, you know, many scientists believe that it should be that this idea of balance should be included as one of our senses, on the same plane as sight, as smell, taste, touch, and hearing. And I actually believe this, because without balance, you would not even be able to sit in your chair without falling out of it very soon. Oh, wow. Much less walk, run, or jump. You know, there's several pieces of information that affect the simple ability to balance, okay? So one of them is gravity, our acknowledgement of it and our relationship with gravity. The other is angular motion and the way that we move around. This affects your balance. And the last is spatial awareness, how far away things are from you and your ability to understand that space. And you know, in the human body, bear with me here, this does relate to Jesus in some way. You know, within the inner ear is something called the vestibular system, all right? And it has a series of 3 canals that all exist in angular, 3-dimensional, in angular right angles to one another, on 3-dimensional plane, which means depth, height, and width, all right? So, and in these canals, are two things. There's fluid in those canals, and there's also crystals in those canals. Yeah. The fluid within those canals helps our brain understand when we're moving. So when we move, the fluid in our ear canals moves. And then our brain interprets all of that data and then gives us the correct way to understand the world around us. All right? And so, for instance, if you were to turn in a circle over and over again, you've probably experienced this before, and then you suddenly stop, it feels like the world is still turning, correct? Yeah. That's because that fluid in your ear is still turning. All right? And once it stops turning, the dizziness goes away. But that fluid is crucial for you being able to move around and understand where you can go and how you don't fall over while you move. There's also crystals in your ear that help us understand gravity, or more accurately, where is down. Okay? So when you lie down, your body, you don't get dizzy when you lie down because your body now understands where down is. This is why sometimes if you've ever been scuba diving and you go deep enough, you lose all sense of gravity. You also lose all sense of where up is. All right? And it actually can be very dangerous. Just if you're ever in that situation, just follow the bubbles, you know? But when our vestibular system is compromised, even the ability to sit up can be an excruciating experience.
Sure.
Of dizziness and bewilderment. Without our sense of balance, we literally cannot function in the physical world. Similarly, not having a system to create balance in our spiritual, emotional, social, family, or work life can also be very crippling for us, causing us to fall down over and over and over again. The simple life requires balance. Luke chapter 2, verse 41, says this: every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. After the festival was over and his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled for a day. Then they began to look for him among the relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. You know, you might look at this and be like, so what's going on with Mary and Joseph here? Like, they lost their child. They didn't ask about their child for a day as they were traveling across the desert from Jerusalem back to their home. And, you know, what would happen is that there would be a caravan of family and friends and neighbors that would travel to Jerusalem together. And it was kind of like the village would be watching your child as you traveled back and forth to celebrate Passover. So there was an assumption that their child was with everybody else's child. So at the end of the day of traveling, they went to go look for Jesus to call him home, or to call them to whatever tent they were staying in, and they could not find him. All right, they were already a day from Jerusalem, so they had to sleep, then wake up the next day, go back to Jerusalem, get to Jerusalem at night once again, and then the next day they found him. So that's kind of what is happening here. Those of us who are parents, perhaps more especially those who have more than one child, can relate to this moment of completely forgetting that you have children. And you can sympathize with Mary and Joseph. Life can get so out of hand, you can get losing track of things. And sometimes it happens to be your children that you lose track of. But sometimes it's your finances. Sometimes you feel like you haven't held a conversation with your spouse for weeks that doesn't involve school for the kids' clothing, kids' room, kids' behavior, or finances. Sometimes it's your yard that no longer has the intention to pay to it. Sometimes it's the leaky sink that you promised that you would fix for weeks. Sometimes it's the doorknob that keeps falling off, the road disposal. Sometimes you haven't shared your faith for a month, or you've gone weeks without having a decent time with God. Whatever the case, we lose track of things, and we feel as though we're always playing catch-up with everything. Some of your lives might be so out of control, it's entertaining for other people to watch. A little bit like a circus. You know, I feel this way when there's certain families that come over to our house because they're the same age with our kids. So you got the Diakinos and the Heckmans, the Perkins. And I would always be amused at trying try to watch other families leave my house. Because, all of us have, 4 or 5 kids. And so you get one child's shoes on and ready to go, and then one is disappearing back into the basement of my house. And just when you get one child ready to go, the other one disappears somewhere. And just getting out the door to your car can take 15 minutes, and then one of my children tries to sneak into their car with them to go home. And it can be a bit of a circus living life. But when life is out of balance, we do change. We become more irritable and reactive when life is out of balance. We get tired and we get fatigued more easily just by things being out of balance. We drift to escapist activities when life is out of balance. TV, internet, gaming. We get overly sensitive and we get offended very quickly when life is out of balance. We nitpick other people. So we create fights in the home with our friends. The littlest of things can set us off. We have to reestablish balance in our lives. The Earth, the Earth is rotating about 1,000 miles per hour, which is really fast. We don't really feel that, but it's happening. And on both poles of the Earth are giant ice caps. And those ice caps have a lot to do with how the Earth turns. And if you notice, there's a little bit of a wobble to the Earth as it turns, and the ice caps affect it. And it's amazing to think that if that ice just melted, the Earth may actually turn at 90 degrees and then start rotating the other direction. All right? That's how precarious balance on something as large as the planet can be. All right? So for us, if you just remove one thing from our lives, we can turn 90 degrees going the wrong way. When we don't have a proper balance in our lives, the result in stress, pressure, and anxiety manifest themselves in unhealthy ways, like I've already said. We become absentee mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, friends. Even if we're there physically, we're not there in the present. We begin making choices based on our most pressing emotions, rather than upon what's supposed to be our deepest held convictions when we're out of balance. I think the key to establishing balance is understanding what is it that you're actually focusing on. What is it that is actually important to you? What's actually important to you is what you end up thinking about. Right. It ends up being what you're planning for. One of the characteristics of limitations, depending on how you see it, that I possess, that I can literally only focus on one thing at a time. I don't have the ability to multitask many things at once. This has been a cause of consternation between my wife and I. Now, the focus that I do have is usually extremely intense. And when I'm focused on something, I block out the rest of the world. I don't do it on purpose. I just do it. So there have been times where I've been reading a book and my wife has been speaking to me for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And I don't even know it. Okay? And you can believe that or not. But my wife has had trouble. And when I get that focus, I can't really see anything else. All right. And my wife used to believe that I was just ignoring her. All right. Until we had children, and the first 4 children that we had were all boys, and they all had the same exact characteristics. So after 10 or 12 years of being married, I was finally validated in my ability to not focus. It actually really messes me up when we go to the drive-thru. I don't know if you're like this, but I have a person talking to me through the drive-thru window, and then I've got people giving me orders, sometimes changing them. I have literally considered just walking out of my car and going to find a new life. If a friend calls me up, and then my wife finds out, I'll be talking to my friend, and she'll say, "Oh, say this to them," and now my brain just freezes. I don't know my name, I don't know where I am, because I have a hard reset for a computer. But I also can't let things go easily when I get focused on something. So if there's a project that I have to do, if I have to build something in the house, or I have to fix something in the house, if I can't get it done, I literally can't do anything else. I'll go to the hardware store 9 different times until this is done. If I lose something, nothing else exists. Even then I can't find it. I don't need it right now. I don't know if I'll ever need it again in my life. But the fact that I don't know where it is bothers me so much that I can't do anything until I have found it. I get tunnel vision. Life gets a little bit unbalanced by how focused I get on the wrong things. I can bring things from work home to my family where it doesn't belong. I can bring things from my family into work where it doesn't belong. And I can forget to bring God into both where he does belong. Yeah. It's amazing what catastrophes can happen in life when we get on balance. Go down to chapter 10 of Luke. We're going to look at verse 38. And we're going to look at this family that Jesus had a very close relationship with. And in verse 38 it says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do work by myself? Just tell her to help me. Martha, Martha. And first of all, if the Lord says your name twice, he's not going to compliment you. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen what is better, and that will not be taken from her. I know this situation so well, and I have felt what Martha feels so much. There are times when I am doing a good thing, or I'm doing a right thing, I'm doing a charitable thing, let's say, and I'm looking around and nobody is helping. And immediately I'm angry at this. Like if I see someone else laughing, I'm like, what are you laughing at? Why don't you help? Why don't you stop talking and help me do something? You know, if I'm around the house and I'm doing stuff around the house and everybody else is playing games, I'm like, hey guys, it's not fun time right now. It's pick up stuff time. All right? And I shouldn't be the only one doing it right now. You know, I've often read this and thought, but Jesus, honestly, if everyone did what Mary was doing, then nothing would get done. If they both choose that course, then you're not going to be eating, Jesus. You know, it's a strange thing to be in the middle of doing a good deed and yet to have irritation and anger and anxiety growing in your heart. You know, I have seen this growing up at Thanksgiving. I think it's supposed to be a family affair. It's supposed to be fun. When you make your food, it's supposed to be spending time together. And yet, it seems like the preparations for Thanksgiving create a lot of family division at times. You can come late, you don't bring the right thing, you're not helping out. Now, I've gone to weddings, which is there anything that's a more happy event than a wedding? Except that sometimes when you go to weddings, people have lost their minds. The linen isn't the right color, the flowers aren't where they're supposed to be. You know, so-and-so is supposed to be sitting here, and that person is supposed to be sitting there. It creates all kinds of drama. And this is supposed to be the happiest time of this person's life, and we're falling apart. Right? The number of arguments that have occurred in the car on the way to church for married people in this fellowship is probably extraordinary. Wouldn't it be amazing if all of a sudden somehow we could just all find out what everybody argued about in the car on the way to church? I would love to know, Larry and Anna, what did they argue about in the last year on the way to church? Or, and I'm not just picking on that, we all are. You know, this is probably a phenomenon that should be studied. You know, I remember one time my wife and I were making a video about marriage. This is during COVID, okay? So everything has to be done by video. And someone had asked us to make a video, something about helping marriage. I don't know. And we're making this video, and we are fighting so hard during this video. I'm so upset with my wife during this video. We do multiple takes after multiple takes after multiple takes. And she's like laughing, and I don't think this is funny at all. I don't want this to be over. At one point, and I have the video of it, I'm so discouraged by her and by this whole process that this is like the opening thing. Hi everybody, welcome to the marriage guys. get easily distracted from the bigger, more important picture. Your life is unbalanced. Jesus was invited into a home. In that home, good, godly people actually lived. One was distracted and one was not. Mary was fixated on the guest, the Lord. Martha was fixated upon herself. Funny, in her argument, she uses the word me 3 times. She could have been fixated on her guest and done the serving at the same time. But she was distracted by many things, which was Jesus' challenge. Too often we invite Jesus into our homes and then we get irritated and stressed out by the preparation that requires. When Jesus responds to Martha, he says, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about a great many things. Only one thing is needed. Mary chose what is better, and that will not be taken from her. I have read from some Greek scholars that Jesus is using a double meaning here. One meaning has to do with food, the other has to do with spirituality. On the one hand, the spiritual hand, Jesus is saying that you have chosen to be focused on many distractions, while Mary has chosen not to be distracted. So what she's chosen isn't going to be taken from her. But then on the other hand, he's also saying, you are distracted by these many dishes that you're making when all that was required is a simple meal. One dish. All I need is a simple meal. And there's an interesting juxtaposition of stories that takes place. Because you have Mary and Martha that's taking place here, and then you have the parable of the Good Samaritan that's also taking place nearby. And the interaction between Mary and Martha and the interaction between these righteous men and the Good Samaritan have a parallel. In the Good Samaritan, a Levite and a priest both pass by a severely hurt man in need of care. Now, one of the possible implications of the story is that both men thought this man was already dead. They were on their way to the temple where they needed to serve. And if they touched a dead man on the way to the temple, they could not serve. Law required them to purify themselves for 7 days. And so they're seeing this man like, well, I think he's dead. I cannot touch him. I'm going to do this good thing. And so I can't be distracted. The Samaritan, however, had no such inhibitions. All right? They lost their way of doing what was truly needed on their way to doing something they thought was good. And it was good. They lost the way by not choosing the better thing. The key is to begin with the right priorities for anything we do. Make Jesus the capstone. The stone we build the rest of our homes around. When he is the capstone, we're easily distracted. Amazingly enough, Christians can be the most blind to when he has been removed as the capstone. We sometimes do ourselves into believing that doing something good means that he is still the capstone. You come to church doesn't mean that Jesus is still your capstone. You share your faith doesn't mean that. You serving others doesn't mean that. You giving money doesn't mean that. If you are someone who serves and when you get annoyed when others don't serve enough, you've removed your capstone. That was Martha's issue. She allowed herself to be distracted. In everything we do, in every decision we make, we have to build our activity and choices around the capstone, or we become unbalanced. Our emotions go all over the place. It's amazing how you can look forward to doing something, and then one thing happens, and now you're just mad. If you could be going on a date with your loved one, if you've been looking forward to this all week, and then one comment can destroy the entire evening. Yeah. If Martha had built her willingness to serve around Jesus himself, the two things likely would occur in common. The desire to serve would have become a part of her worship, and it would have become part of her joy. Not proof that she was righteous, not her badge of honor, not simply her righteous obligation. And secondly, she wouldn't have been focused on what others were doing or not doing.
Right.
Her service and her worship would have been enough for her, and it wouldn't have mattered what other people did. Instead, she was distracted by the busyness of preparations, the injustice of her sister just sitting there, and the Lord's bewildering tolerance of it all. That's how we get sometimes. God, you see this, don't you? I'm not the only one seeing this foolishness here. You can't do something about this guy? Right. We've removed our caps. We have to focus on Jesus. Amen. That's like the whole world in his hand. He's spinning the world, ice caps and all. He knows how to do this. He knows what he's doing. He knows what that guy's doing too. Yeah. You worry about you. Right? And keep your focus on Jesus. Yeah. To Martha, things were spinning out of control, and she was getting stressed out. Her life was unbalanced. To her, the point had become the meal itself. Things getting done. Her sister sharing the burden and serving. That had become the point for her. The point needed to be the man sitting in her home, Jesus. Who wouldn't have cared if the meal was late? Jesus wouldn't have cared. He wouldn't have cared if the meal had been a simple course or affair. He wouldn't have cared if she had served leftovers so she could spend more time listening to him. It was her prerogative to make a more elaborate meal. That's fine. She could do that. But she needed to be able to do it with joy. And it was right. And if that's not possible, then don't do it. Even if others judge us, as now Martha had judged Mary. That's the thing. Mary chose to sit at Jesus' feet, and she got judged for it. When you make the decision to do the more important thing, you will be judged by it. You'll be judged by people who aren't believers. But guess what? You're going to be judged by believers. Martha was a believer, and she was judging a believer. All right, that's family. That's what we're going to do tonight. All right? We have to remember to build our actions, our plans, all of our activities around the same principle. Jesus has got to be the point. Not you getting something, not you learning something, not you being recognized for something, not you being the center of attention, not you achieving anything. If you work so hard to provide for your family, and you come home stressed out and a mess, what are you doing? Get a different job. Live on less. Work less hours. Live in a smaller place. Have less stuff. Better that and be home happy with your family than to have the world and be stressed out. If you work so hard to help your brothers and sisters in this fellowship to mature and grow, yet they always seem to repeat the same sins or mistakes, which they will, and this makes you pull your heart away, you've abandoned your capstone. If you serve the kingdom with all your heart and are deeply irritated that the favor is not returned to you when you have need, you've abandoned your capstone. If you wake early every morning to read the Bible and then to pray, and then the ensuing storm of readying your family for church, you snap at your spouse in the car on the way there, then you've abandoned your capstone. Jesus was a master of helping people to create a simple life. To purge from life what is excess and distracting. To refocus the eyes and to turn the heart upon what's actually important, what actually builds a flourishing life. To take life that is spinning out of control, to remove the weights of sin that create imbalance, and to restore peace. That's what we do. The thing I take away from Jesus in the story of Mary and Martha is this. We're not always going to be in Mary's place. We won't. We're not always going to be able to make a choice just to sit and listen to Jesus. We also will not always be in Martha's place either. But when you are in Martha's shoes, and when a meal has to be made and preparations must be completed, it is not the final product that matters. What we place before the table when Jesus is there will not matter as much as the manner in which we did it. So let's do it with a wink and a smile. Let's unburden ourselves the unnecessary distracted focus of what we look like, what we're getting, and let's make Jesus our capstone. Amen. Thank you very much.